good?
Are we good?
That should be good.
All right, perfect. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. It is 10:02 a.m., the 12th of July. We do have a quorum. Thank you, everybody, for being here. We do need to do election of officers. We continue to forget the last couple of years, so here we go. So we would need to make a motion for a chairman and vice chair.
I'll make a motion. We have Angela Wilson as our chairperson. I will second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. I'm fine with that. I'm good. It's fine.
Well, you do a good job.
3 years, let's do it. How about a vice chair? Currently, we have Kelly Richards is our vice chair.
I'll nominate Kelly Richards to remain our vice chair.
Thank you. We have a first,
I'll second.
second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Perfect. Thank you very much. We are going to go ahead and we need a motion to amend the agenda. The applicant unfortunately went to the wrong place, so somebody is on their way. So we're going to go into other business. I just need a motion to change the agenda and we can move forward. Or amend the agenda, sorry.
Amend it to do our.
To do other business
Other
first.
business.
Yep. Yeah, we'll do other business first and then come back to the
Make
applicant.
a motion to amend the agenda and move other business forward.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you very much. We do need a motion also to approve, or did anybody see any corrections for the minutes from the June 14th meeting? Kelly and I had a moment and we thought there was something wrong and it was us, so we're good.
Okay, all right.
We're like, oh, we're putting way too much thought into this. What are we doing?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Perfect, motion carries. All right, we'll go ahead and we will jump into other business, discussion of housing density. This Megan or Eric, who do we have? All right.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So what you have before you is a wonderful site plan that was created by Megan Toomer. So kind of shows you some things that we're looking at as far as lot size and kind of looking at mirroring what the city of Rock Springs is doing concerning the townhome development. And so what you have there is two layouts. You have a 3,000 square foot lot and a 4,000 square foot lot. And when you look at it, see, we'll have that pulled up on the screen there. On the 3,000 square foot lot, what you're looking at in the city, especially behind Smith's there, is a 35-foot lot width. Again, this is just a rough draft. And then you've got 86 feet long as far as the length of the lot itself. Then in the front, typically what you have when you look at those townhouse developments is you'll have the garage up front. And I believe that's a 25-foot setback, correct, on both of these. And what we've seen in the city is a 20-foot setback. I would recommend that we stick with 25 feet. When you look at some aerial photography, especially around the city, when you get into those smaller lots, is the cars are actually sticking out into the right of way. And so that's kind of an issue. Here in Wyoming, we like our trucks. And so those typically are longer. So I would recommend that we stick with 25 at a minimum. As you can see, and then typically what goes above the garage is usually a bedroom upstairs. And then it's offset where the front door is located at. This is just an average of what townhomes are. It's not to say they can't be smaller or larger. So it's just a speculative look at as far as what a layout would be. As you can see on the 3,000 square foot lot, you've got a pretty small backyard, if any. You're looking at 16 foot in the back. So that's not a whole lot of space back there, especially when you want to put a shed up or something. You're not going to have a whole lot of room back there. When you look at in comparison to the 4,000 square foot lot with a 25-foot setback, and again, keep in mind what would be mirrored on the other side on both these lots is going to be identical because it's going to be an attached structure. And so you're looking at more of 20 feet in the rear yard. So really what increases, and then a 40-foot width so that you can have a little bit more space, as you can see on the side, in comparison to that 3,000 square foot lot where you've got a 15-foot setback. You would have a 20-foot setback and 16, I guess, with the residence as you get further back, and then 20-foot. So with the 4,000, I think, Megan, correct me if I'm wrong, the ones behind Smith are about 3,900, 3,800.
3850 is pretty average for behind
So-
Smith's, not development.
Yeah, so that's what you're typically looking at back there. They've got pretty good sized backyards in those ones. So kind of some direction and just discussion as far as square footage goes. What we should look at, I know this is my personal opinion, that we should not, if we are going to look at 3,000 square feet, we should not go below that. Keep in mind, when you have a bigger width or setback on the side there on that 4,000, and we can go with 3,500 square feet also as far as a minimum lot size, so that you could get a little bit below 4,000 square feet. Again, you could have some parking on the side there if you've got an RV, if you got a trailer. We'll give you a little bit more space on the side there to put those structures. We could definitely we're going to contact the city of Rock Springs, maybe look at some building plans of townhomes so we know exactly what we're dealing with. But I'm just opening it up for discussion here. What your thoughts are in comparison of the 3,000, 4,000. What are your thoughts?
I got a few questions for that. What's our current minimum lot size for a single family home in the R2 with water, sewer and all that? What's our current minimum lot size?
And isn't it 1 acre for the county?
7,500 square feet is the minimum lot size for any lot within the county, as
Yeah.
long as it has water and sewer.
7,500.
And that's for, I believe that's MH, which is manufactured home.
'Cause
And then
I'm all for it, because I've always had a dream in my head of a nice townhome subdivision with larger lots that still provide the benefits of living in the county, place for the animals in the back or something, but still larger lots. That's always been in my mind sight for that, but we don't want to, my opinion, go too small. We need to open up a little bit, but we don't need to be as tight as the city. We don't need to mirror the city. We're the county.
Sure.
We're out there. It's a different lifestyle from downtown Rock Springs to, Jamestown or North Rock Springs, so that's just part of my brain saying, something like that needs to be there, but I still think we should have larger lot size. If 7,500 is our minimum now, why not 7,500? They can still larger lot, it's still carrying some of the size, some of the benefits of being out in the county.
Mhm.
Just where my thought, like.
Yeah.
So.
So- Can I comment on this?
Sure, yeah.
So I have to disagree with Mr. Richards. You have lots throughout the county. You can have an acre lot or bigger lots, and that's always going to be available in the county. I think as a developer, I think that you're looking at to do a subdivision type like this for the county. It's a little bit unique. I like the idea of having a minimum frontage of 60 feet. Even the smaller lot, the 3,000, that could fit. You have a minimum size. I wouldn't even go below 3,000. That's pretty small. It's going to be high density. But if we used to do that, you'd also have to put in there a caveat of some type of where no on-street parking, no RV parking. They would have to, a developer, and this would be cost effective for the developer too. You could actually put a place in there for they can park RVs and no on-street parking. I like the idea of having a higher density area, but it has to be maintained, and it has to be regulated I shouldn't say regulated, that's not the right word. I don't like regulations as like anybody else, but you have to have some sorts of quality control when you're building something like that, inspections. Because a lot of people, you don't have this in the city of Rock Springs. A lot of people don't have the availability of a 3,000 square foot lot. That's small. But if you have a minimum size of 3,000 or even 3,500 for a developer, it gives a developer a lot more leeway to put, because honestly, it's going to be the money. The more lots they can get, the more money they're going to generate for themselves. So I get that. A 1 acre lot or a 7,500 acre lot. I mean, that's a big lot for the county to do high residential. So Kelly,
Big in the city, but it's not big out here.
it's not big out here, but I can see we're going to be competing with the city, and that's what I like. I like that we could actually, it generates more revenue for us, and it gives a developer a little bit more leeway. When you have to do those bigger lots, you have to look at the cost of the lot to build that. And you can keep your costs down if you can put, 2 lots versus 1. And you have 4 homes versus 1, or 2 homes versus 1 home. And for a developer, you can keep your lot costs down. For instance, I would say a 7,500 square foot lot in the city of Rock Springs is going to cost you minimum $70,000. Whereas you do 2 of these lots, you cut that in half, you're looking at $3,500 per lot. That's a hell of a savings for first time home buyer. So that's where I can see that I like that idea, but it has to be, you have to have inspections for quality control when you're building it. You just can't let somebody, like right now, there is no quality control.
No.
And I agree with that.
Yeah.
So my perspective as the realtor side of it, is the 3,000 is too small. The 4,000, I don't mind. You have like the development by the high school on Elk and Pheasant and all those up there, and they're tiny. There's no yards. So people with these dogs, I mean, it's hard. So the fact that the larger lot has a bigger backyard, you have a little bit more parking because everybody does have stuff, and depending on who develops it, if there is an HOA or not, and all that fun stuff. The 4,000 square foot to me is much more appealing than the 3. I think the 3 is just too small. That we would be better off having a little bit larger. I don't think the 7,500, because that is a residential lot for in town, which I get it's the county and I'm the first one to have 19 acres out there, but the 4,000 to me to be able to sell and do all that would be much more appealing for somebody who wants to purchase it, that you have a little bit more room.
Madam Chair, and I agree with you. I'm kind of liking the 4,000 square foot. And I don't know, just going from, there's just another way of looking at it also. And Megan and I have talked about this is right now you can put a duplex in an R2 lot, right? So 7,500 square foot with water and sewer, you can put a duplex on. The problem is you can't put a property line down the middle of it. So you can, I guess, rent one side and then live in the other. So really the way they're looking at it is, you got an 8,000 square foot lot with a line in the middle. So that makes your 4,000 square foot lots on both sides. I know that's just another way I was looking at it.
Yeah.
So to address that 7,500 square foot issue, that it is an issue because even when we had someone looking at doing a developer doing smaller lots, that 7,500 square foot was not small enough. And so that was the issue so it's really not going to address some of the issues that are out there. The other thing, so I guess, how did the rest, Mr. Lyon, Mr. Gerard, what are your feelings on it?
So I like the 4,000 square foot, much better than the 3,000. 3,000 is pretty tight. As far as the back setback, you got a 15-foot minimum. This house shows a 20-foot. I think 20-foot would be good just for drainage reasons. A lot of people pin themselves into a hole in the backyard where they can't get
side setback.
the back setback
Okay.
where they can't get
Okay.
drainage to get it to the front.
Okay.
Plus that gives them an opportunity to get the water away from the house and then back around the house.
Well, the county, Rob, will the county require, I mean, City of Rock Springs requires all the water to go to the front of the house. The county's gonna be a little different. It could go to the back. It could go, you know,
Well, it can't.
there's nothing in the back.
It can't drain onto another property. If you're going to create more flow, it can't do that without a drainage easement.
Okay.
And then
If you just do a drainage easement, you can still drain it to the back.
you could, if
Okay.
there was a drainage easement, then you run into who's taking care of those drainage easements as well. And then for corners, you would want a different setback than 10 foot as well, if you're on a corner lot.
For line of sight. They're usually what, 20 per side, I
In,
think.
in city, it's 20 and 20 front and the corner side.
Oh, line of sight.
But yeah, you don't want to push that house 10 feet onto that adjacent street.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's a good point.
And then increasing the density, when you're in townhome areas, there's usually like one small spot on the street for parking in between the driveways.
Yeah.
And it gets really tight in there. It's kind of hard to drive down, which I think if you develop a property, you can kind of take care of that, where if you use those streets as kind of, those are your residential streets, you're not a collector street, so you can park on those. But your main streets going into a subdivision, you don't want it to where you got car after car where kids could jump out and stuff like that. So I wouldn't want to create like long roads where cars are parked and people are driving down to get home and kids are running out and everything else like
Or
that.
making the lots large enough that all the parking is off street. You know,
Can't let, Peter, you can't make the law.
Purpose.
Yeah.
Even with the 7,500 square foot lot, you'll still see, and I'm a proponent of no parking on the street, period. I mean, I believe in that. What Rob is saying is correct. Even with the 7,500 square foot lot, if you have a lot of those and people are parking on the street, it creates a congestion and it looks like hell. It really does. I agree with Rob. I don't think there should be any parking on the street. For that reason. And if you have a high density development like this, you can put in the plans of an off-street parking, a gated, locked area where those residents have a place to store their campers or four-wheelers and
Yeah.
things like that.
Which
we can go all the way back to White Mountain Village, go back to days, there was
Oh.
off-street parking
Oh
and
my God.
that's so tight. You know,
That's
you're not on the street out there. There's carve outs all over it for parking off the street.
Cause your street's maybe 20 feet wide at that.
That subdivision
I
should
bet
have
they're
never
closer
happened.
to 12.
Yeah, maybe.
Mark, what's
So
your
Madam
thoughts?
Chair, yeah.
A little question, what
ahead.
is the current offset or current setbacks for houses in the county? How far does, if you're gonna build a house in the county, how far back is its current setback?
25 feet in
25
most zone
feet.
districts, and then there are 20-foot in manufactured homes. So Clearview Acres is a 20-foot setback.
20 foot?
Yeah,
I
Madam
like the
Chair.
25. I like the 25 for the reason being, as you mentioned earlier, people with trucks, four-door trucks. I mean, 25 feet barely covers it. You know, a truck is what, 23 and a half feet?
23, yeah.
Yeah.
Getting braided in.
So 25, you can't have them 20. There's just no way.
Go ahead.
I have to agree with a lot of the comments that have been made. I do know that kind of the intent of this is to provide some affordable housing within the county and so, yeah, that's gonna have to take a decreased lot size and whatnot. But yeah, with the setbacks, the parking, I mean, we see the same thing with any alley in Rock Springs. People think that's the place to park their campers and boats and things like that. So I think there has to be some type of designation of where toys go. And I know not everybody wants to go to a storage unit or place, but we see a lot of those in those storage units and areas. And so at least those people are responsible about what they do with their units. But yeah, so I think whatever is allowed, I think is what needs to be kind of designated on what's happening.
So we met with the developer on Friday, Megan, myself, and one of the discussion points was to allow for a storage area or require it actually. And, especially with everybody's toys and things like that, and if there's not storage units that are available. So it's not a bad idea to designate some sort of storage area so that they can place some of these things. When we went driving down one of the areas not far from Home Depot, those were really tight, the locations of those. And the one thing that I saw was an issue is the parking. Because when you drive down there, there's just, it's just not the typical one, 2 cars a household anymore. It's just not. And so, especially, it's just the way it is in the US right now. So everyone has a car. And then you got the trucks and utilities and the trailers, utility trailers and campers and things. So just, again, these are just discussions, just so we have an idea when we start formulating these, what to look for. So appreciate the feedback.
Megan, did you have anything to add?
The only other thing I really have to add is while we were driving around, you have your big junction boxes for all your utilities right in the front, and trying to figure out and account for that. Having the larger setback in the front will help doing that. And then if we can put the no parking, definitely will account for to where people are using the spaces they should be using for parking. People are always creating, well, it's my grass, I'm not watering it there, so I can have that parking space and everything. And it creates a lot of problems down the road with that. But the other thing that we talked about with the developer on Friday was if you do more of a storage place for your RVs, utility trailers, things like that, with it being in the county, you're going to run into problems. You're going to be a little more selective on where you can put it because you're going to need water and sewer. But also in most of those locations, you're probably going to be more abutting commercial or industrial zone property. And where if you use that more as a buffer, that kind of helps transition, kind of doing an open space type thing, but making it usable to the residents that are living there. Just another way of looking at it too.
When the developer, you can also tell the developer, he says, you can gate the storage area and you can
absolutely.
charge people, $20-30 a month per vehicle or whatever. Makes it, a little bit more attractive to the developer, or start an HOA or whatever. So, but you want to keep that stuff off the street. You want to keep it out in front of the houses because you're going to still have to have a green area in front of the house, and you want at least 2-car parking in front of the house. Maybe everybody's right. The 4,000 square foot instead of the 3,000 is a better way to go, because you might have enough room on the side, like Gary mentioned earlier, to put a concrete pad over there to park a boat inside the fence, but not outside the fence.
Yeah, you have, in Green River, the Shoshone Mesa subdivision over there, they have 1 parking spot. So all in front of the school are residents that people trying to pick up, drop off kids, they can't because they're residents across the street park there. Cause I think parking is a huge issue that needs to be addressed and make sure, because once it's done, it's done. There's no going back saying, wait, we messed that up. We need to put more parking in. So to be able to get everything off the street so we have parking, I think is huge.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Madam Chair, as you know, these are in high demand. I mean, how
Oh
many
my
towns,
gosh.
how many townhomes are on the market right now?
Zero.
Okay, so
Commissioner Richards, what do you have for us? Thank you for being here this morning.
Madam Chairman, Commissioners. Right now, there's a massive housing shortage across the
Huge.
country, and it's hitting right here at home. We're going to see it worse over the next 2 to 5 years. We have about 4,000 to 6,000 short-term jobs coming. We have about 2,000 long-term jobs coming, and we don't have the housing to absorb that, which is kind of what spurred a lot of this discussion on high-density housing. As I've researched this, there's about 3 things that are causing the housing shortage nationwide. 1 is single family with a minimum lot size. 2 is parking restrictions. The putting a minimum number of parking places on residences is actually forcing land that could be used for housing to be used for parking. Not everybody is a 2-car, 3-car, 4-car. Not everybody's beyond a 1-car. Some people don't even have 1 car. We're spoiled out here. We use cars, but that doesn't mean it's always going to be that way. The third thing that drives housing shortages is what they call NIMBY, not in my backyard.
Yeah.
everybody wants to be the last subdivision before the great views, but it doesn't work that way. If you want to be the last, you're going to have to go buy all those pieces of property beyond you. But we see it in here. We see it in the city. Somebody wants to do a development. Somebody wants to do the next development. Everybody goes up and says, oh, I don't want that high density. So we're going to have to really resist that, because high density is the only way you're going to absorb the housing demand that's coming our way. So as you work through this, I appreciate what you're putting into it. Remember to be flexible and to take into account the developers, the tone the developers want to set for their communities. It's easy for us to say, well, you shouldn't have parking on the street, but if the developer takes that into account and has wide enough streets, then it makes sense. If they want a neighborhood with shared living space behind the houses, you need to be flexible enough to allow that. We need to kind of think out of the box, maybe go back to a time where we build neighborhoods instead of developments, but we need to let the developers have the flexibility to do those things. So as you work through this, keep in mind, we have a housing boom coming, and they're going to need places to put it. And we're going to need it sooner rather than later. These jobs are going to start next year.
Yeah.
And the demand for the houses is going to come next year. So that's all I had. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I appreciate you guys working on it, because it's going to be really important over the next couple of years.
No, I agree with you wholeheartedly that we need to keep an open mind. What's always worked in the past doesn't, mean that it won't work in the future, because it very well could. I think, we have a Wyoming mentality of, this is our space and we don't want to share it, and this is mine. And we have a huge, just every single day, people coming in, and the shortage is incredible. It's bad now, let alone in 2 more years.
So sitting here thinking about it, and you're going to have sewer and water going into
Sure.
all these developments, because there can be septic systems or wells.
Right.
And there's not that much available area in the county with sewer and water that they can generally hook up to. So Eric was correct. You're going to be having to put these developments into an industrial area.
Yeah.
That there's going to be, and it's going to be, you're going to want that separation. I think you're going to need, you're going to have to take in consideration, there's going to be, businesses are going to be around these developments. Because I'm thinking of, because I've looked over the years, to buy property where you have water and sewer, and there's hardly anything out there. So I think making sure the developer has a way to generate revenue for himself with the parking is a very attractive thing, because that's an income that's going to be coming in after all the lots are sold. But you can't have, with the industrial stuff and with the business stuff, you can't have the parking on the streets. And I think we have to really be conscious about that, because the safety issue, there'll be kids around here. And you can't have the line of sight. I mean, even with my developments I've done in the past, you still have the cars parking on the street, and those are bigger lots. And you don't see the kids running around. And you're talking about these areas are going to be in the industrial parts and the business parts. So we have to keep that in mind.
No, I agree.
Madam Chair, and it's great that you brought up the water and sewer districts. Just real quickly, I have spoken with some of the water and sewer districts. There's some for and some against. I was made very clear from White Mountain Water and Sewer that they are completely against higher density. The issue there is the system wasn't developed for high density. That's why there's a lot size overlay out there. I did let them know that this is an R3 zoning that we're looking at. I don't know if there's any R3 zoning in White Mountain Country Estates. 10 Mile I did not contact. It's not an option there. There's no sewer. That's a huge issue. The other issue, I did speak with Jamestown, and they were okay with the system as long as it has to be engineered. So with the capacity. So, the issue there is not until sewer goes in. We're hoping that with the additional sewer out there, especially on those other phases on Ranch View, not necessarily going to high density there, but they'll be able to get smaller lots out there with the sewer addition out there. I did speak with, and I still need a conversation with is it West Side Water and West Side Sewer. with that, because that is where the developer wants to go, is in that sewer district. They did state that they're going to have to be upgrades to the system if they do that. So some for, some against. Just keep in mind that whatever happens, the engineer is going to have to design the system to accommodate for the usage there. So that's really going to dictate everything once that happens. So one other issue that I wanted to talk about briefly too is we don't have building code in the county. So when you're putting an attached structure, that, you know, that sends some health and safety concerns as to how we're going to regulate that. I did sit down with Mr. Zimmerman. We went over one thing that we would want to add into the code. Inspections will be required. And Jim, I think it's a 2-hour, it's a 2-hour fire rated wall that's going to need to separate those two structures. And so we are going to need to make sure that that is a 2-hour fire rated wall. The other thing is we're going to need a survey, because when you go for a building plan, we want to make sure that wall is on the property line and not, you know, so there's going to be additional inspections that are going to be required. Because we don't have building code, we will not be able to perform a structural inspection, but we can make sure that at least there is a 2-hour fire rated wall. And so what that means is, you know, structurally speaking, we just don't, well, I guess, Jim, maybe you can, I hate to put you on the spot, but talk about a little about what you're looking at as far as an inspection on a townhome.
Commissioners. Jim Zimmerman, fire inspector, fire warden. The thing that has to happen is that separating wall needs to be 2 hours. Code requires, residential falls under an R3. Now residential has its own code, which is the residential building code, which we have not adopted, but we can cover, I'll cover a lot of the access and public access and the access for residences under R3 in the fire code. And R3, we need a 2-hour wall. It's going to need to be inspected. It'll be an additional inspection for myself that I don't normally do. We'd have to have that. And then through that fire code under the separation portion, it does refer us back to the building code. So with that, we're allowed to pull that from the building code. So there's ways to get around not adopting the whole building code. So as long as the fire code opens the door, we can walk through it. So we'll have to do it, but it will require another inspection, will require more staff time. It'll have to be reviewed. And the only way we're going to be able to do it is to insist on a engineered drawing, an engineered stamped design for that firewall. It's the only way we're going to be able to do it. None of us are experts.
And Mr. Zimmerman, the whole purpose of that is so that those firewalls, so if a fire starts on one side of the structure,
the difference between a firewall and a fire barrier is a firewall will stand and the structure on the other side will stand even upon collapse. That's what's the difference between a firewall and a fire barrier. Fire barrier is going to separate occupancies, and that's going to be in a multi-use building, you know, like a lot of our buildings that are out in the county from the oil field businesses were always B's in the front where they had an office and an S1 in the back where they stored their equipment and worked on their equipment. So there you have a fire barrier, but this is a firewall so that it can be consolidated on one side or the other.
So I guess the whole point is we don't need to, at first I was afraid we're gonna have to adopt the building code or something, or the IRC, and with the fire code, we have enough to make sure these are safe.
Yeah, we'll
Well,
be
for
able to pull that in.
financing- For financing, it has to be a firewall. I mean, it
Yes.
cannot be a barrier. I
Nope.
mean, so for
Has
people
to be.
purchasing them, it does have to be a firewall.
There you go.
Yeah.
Has to be a firewall.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Hey, Eric, are we looking at moving past just the duplex concept of fire to the long line of, 20 units lined in a row property line on each unit? Or
So,
we-
yeah, so Madam Chair, okay, Commissioner Richards, they have quadplexes. I've seen them in the city of Rock Springs. If you drive down Foothill, you can see them. There's quadplexes up there by the President Streets.
Mhm.
So that is something we can look at. Just keep in mind, that's going to be even higher density because now some of those are, I don't know what square footage, if you remember, Megan.
I think the square footage on most of those we were looking at was maybe 3,000, but you're also talking a lot width of 26 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're
Small.
tiny.
they are very small. So right now, I think what we're looking at is
Twin homes.
twin homes. Yeah. So, any other questions? If not, we'll continue. I will meet with West Side, and then if we have any further questions, we'll bring it back before you, kind of in this environment, and then we'll start workshopping it and see if we can get something hammered down. So I appreciate it. Great conversation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, everybody. Good input. Thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and kind of bounce backwards and we will go just board actions from the last meeting. If Megan, you wanted to talk about those two and then we'll jump into the hearing.
I can definitely do that. Let me bounce back. So I'm
Sorry.
Nope. not a problem. I forgot we didn't go over those. So we did have two conditional use permits that were approved at the board level. The first one was Joseph Flime, his other
Mhm.
impound salvage and storage yard on the north lot. Board of County Commissioners did approve that. They did tweak the screening condition on that to where it gives the land use director to have discretion on the type and amount of screening on the north property. They kept the 100% screening on the south and east side like you guys had recommended. They wanted to put it out there to where if it needed to be screened on the north side because it was within the scenic overlay, that it could be there, but again, would be up to discretion of the land use director.
Okay.
And then the conditional use permit for Love's new wastewater system got approved with all the conditions that it had as well.
Great, thank you. All right, we'll move into public hearing number 1, Clark Brothers Enterprises, LMP Towing and Recovery for a conditional use permit, impound and storage yard. Turn it over to you, Megan.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. The property owner of this property is Clark Brothers Enterprises LLC, and the applicant is Troy Clark. It's actually 2 parcels of land totaling 7.16 acres. The address is 99 Reliance Road. Currently, the property is zoned I2, which is heavy industrial, also located within the growth management area. Infrastructure does exist out there. You've got North Sweetwater Sewer District, City of Rock Springs Water, Fire District number 1's responder, Rocky Mountain Power, Dominion Energy, natural gas, and access can come off of Reliance Road, which is a county road right there in front. There also is an access off of Tri-Territory Road, which is on the west side, which is a private road. A little bit of background on this is LMP Towing and Recovery used to operate a parcel located at 19 Kilpecker Lane. This property was zoned light industrial, and they were allowed to operate just a trucking business on this property because of its proximity to the BNR trailer court, which is about 250 feet to the west of it. They could do a trucking business as long as there wasn't any storage of wrecked vehicles on the property. When Clark Brother Enterprises took over the LMP Towing and Recovery, they were put under violation for storing wrecked vehicles on the property. They immediately started to work with Mr. Jim Zimmerman to get the property cleaned up and started searching for another property in which they could meet the requirements for an impound and storage yard, but also a property that worked better for them, quite a bit bigger than the other property they were on. The zoning map zoomed out just a little bit just to kind of show, because the BNR trailer court is kind of still in proximity to where their new property is. You can see it's further property The 99 Reliance Road is further to the east of the BNR trailer court. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in detail when we get to the specific criteria. But I-2, so heavy industrial is pretty much surrounding the property except for a little tiny piece where it's ag on the north side of their property, more the east boundary over there. As you can see, here's it was right before we got our 2023 aerial imagery. So I've only got 2020, but you can see there's two existing structures on the property. There is a rather large drainage on the north end that you can see from the aerial imagery. And they currently have most of the west boundary up to that drainage is fenced and has screening on it. They've got the two gates that access on the Territory Road. And then the south side is completely fenced in with just a little portion on the east side that kind of ties into the shared fence with the property to the east of them as well. The south side has been slatted, as well as that little portion on the east. Kind of back again to the west side with the two gates that are there to where you can see the pavement parking. The gates are not currently screened, and I'll get into hopefully that a little bit more in detail. Mr. Jim Zimmerman properly posted public notice out there, as you can see by the pictures. This was before the applicant did get to screening the property. I'll jump right into special requirements for this. Cannot be established within 600 feet of a church, school, or residential zoning district, or within 1 mile of a recreational facility. There is the R2 zone, like we talked about, located approximately 340 feet southwest of the subject property. That is to the tip of where they kind of have a storage yard for the BNR trailer court. The actual residents don't start where you have your mobile homes for approximately 860 feet. So we, as staff, does feel that that's an appropriate distance away from a residential zoning district. There are no churches or schools within 600 feet, and there's not a recreational facility within 1 mile of the property either. Hazardous waste inventory is going to be the responsibility of the applicant to be use proper maintenance and disposal methods in conformity with DEQ regulations. As always, trying to combine our screening requirements. Screening made of uniform material and built to a uniform height shall be required for properties abutting a less intense zoning district or within a special overlay district within the growth management area. Required screening shall be permanent and constructed to a minimum of 6 feet above finished grade. The board may approve alternative screening plans and or methods. Like I said, most of the property is surrounded by heavy industrial, but as you're coming into Reliance, it is right there on the road. The applicant has taken steps to screen the property already. The south side and east side has slats in it and is 100% screened from there. The west side more has, I believe it's kind of like, first we said canvas, but I think it's a little bit lighter than that, more of a vinyl consistency to that, and is zip tied to the outside of the fence on the west boundary. Both of the gates don't have anything on that. Staff does have concerns about the permanent nature of the vinyl screening, just with how Wyoming weather works and being sitting out in the sun, just having your zip ties failing or breaking because you have so much wind, or sitting out in the sun and kind of degrading, having that fall off. We think there could be potential of keeping that. It could be looked at as a non-permanent fencing, or excuse me, screening. So just something to consider. We did make a couple different site visits, just kind of looking out and trying to figure out what staff would want to recommend as far as screening. As you can see, most of the stuff on the the top side of the slide is showing the west fence entrances there as well. And then the south side, you can see the slatting in the fence. The south side fence is kind of leaning over a little bit, but they did get it slatted completely across. And you can also see that little portion of the east side of the fence that is screened as well. Staff doesn't see any need for screening anymore on the east side because you can't really see it with everything that's on the property to the east. And even as you're driving down, going west, coming out of Reliance, it is very hard to even differentiate what's on what property there. So I don't think screening would be a viable option for most of the east side. No stacking of vehicles is allowed over 6 feet in height unless approved by the board. Staff does recommend that no stacking above 6 feet be allowed. Applicants will need to provide a copy of the business license that you need for an impound and storage yard. That's escaping me. What's that called again?
It's like a disposal and
Disposal-
storage license.
Disposal and storage license from the state of Wyoming.
Why not?
Thank you, Eric. Applicant will need to provide that. It's one of those things they needed to be approved here before they can get that. So once they get that, land use department does need to have that. So we have it on file. And then as this is the first time we've heard this on this property, 2-year time limit is usually what we do for new applications, and staff would request that we stick with a 2-year period on this until we get a little bit further along in the process and make sure they stay in compliance with all state and county regulations. Had sent out notifications for agency and public comment. As always, Colorado Interstate Gas sends it back and saying, we don't have any facilities in the area, so they have no concerns. Staff does recommend approval of this recommendation. We do request the following 5 conditions be added to it. The conditional use permit is personal to Clark Brother Enterprises LLC for 99 Reliance Road. The conditional use permit is approved for a period of 2 years from the date of approval by the Board of County Commissioners. The conditional use permit is in effect as long as the business remains in compliance with county regulations and holds a valid Wyoming vehicle storage and disposal license. Applicant needs to provide a copy of this to the land use staff once they have received it. 100% permanent screening along the southwest and east boundaries of the subject property as indicated in red on the site map. This would include all gates on the property in these areas as well. And I can go back to, it's kind of in red on that aerial that we were talking about. And the last one, vehicles cannot be stacked higher than 6 feet. That's all I have, Madam Chair. And Chase is here instead of the applicant.
Is there anything, Chase, you would like to add? If you want, come on up and introduce yourself if you would, and we'll see if any of the commissioners have any questions for you. Okay. Does anybody have any questions for her? I guess I do have a question, like on the permanent or the fencing, that's the vinyl. Is it zip ties? You said that it's adhered to, that's. Okay. Okay, I just have a sign down the road that my zip ties will not stay on to save myself, and they're double zip tied on like 6 places, and I just had to put different things on there yesterday. So I'm like, there's no way that's gonna stay up. Yeah.
Madam
Okay.
Chair, would the permanent description kind of help with that? I mean, do we determine that as being permanent with the attachment, or is
Or slats permanent, that's
yeah.
a great question.
I mean, this is my opinion, professional opinion, is that's gonna deteriorate over time. I just know
Mhm.
if you've ever run for office and put a sign up on a
Yep.
fence, you know exactly what happens. It ends up being a sale and ending up somewhere else. I'm just concerned with Wyoming weather. And the other thing, it's not a uniform. So we've got kind of a hodgepodge. We got slatting on one side, and then we got this, and it does screen. There's, I mean, more than the slats do, but I don't know. I I don't view that as permanent screening. And if we need to specify that in that condition under 100% permanent screening with slats, privacy slats, I'm okay with that. But I had concerns when I went out there and I saw that, and those zip ties, the sun beats down on them, they
Yeah.
deteriorate. But the other concern is, okay, so if we do attach them more permanently, are they going to tear over time?
And
I just have concerns over that. And I think slats would be more appropriate there. The other thing that has come up from the previous hearings is we've never set a time limit on this, and we
I guess
on when they install it. And so it's very open-ended. So in the last application we had, we did not put a time frame on that. So it could be a year. They're putting privacy. Now, we will hear this again in 2 years, right? So we will come back, and then if there's been any issues, we can readdress it. But again, it's up to the board's discretion what to do there, but that's my opinion on that. Thank you.
Hey, Eric, thanks to the precedent that the commissioners set us, they've allowed the land use director to go out and determine after the fact if screening
Yeah.
is needed. If we add something to this that says, you notice there's a problem, you can fix it versus us having to wait 2 years to
Yeah.
get to it.
I
you
agree.
know?
Yeah.
You'd be, something like that, we could put something like that in there,
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I
And
like
then
that.
my other question was, as I'm looking through the recommendations, and it just might be my brain misfiring. We're approving it for 2 years on one line, and then the conditional use permit is in effect as long as the business remains in compliance. I was like, well, if they're still in compliance, keep going, it's still a 2-year limit. That wording just kind of, as long as they're in compliance, their conditional use permit.
I think just because it's a new, that we would come back and look at it in 2 years, am I
in 2
correct?
years,
Yeah.
right. But I just saw that those two things kind of countered in my brain,
Oh.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Richards, so you can change these conditions as you see fit.
Thank you. All right, at this time, we will go ahead and open it up to the audience. If there's anybody in the audience that is for the conditional use permit. If there's anybody against the conditional use permit, or just would like to say something in general. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the public comment portion, and we'll open it back up to the board for any final further questions, discussions, either for the applicant or staff.
Now, I just think we need to let Eric be able to go out there. If there's some problems with the screening in 6 months or a year, we don't want to have to wait 2 years to come back. Just allow him to keep tabs on it.
I agree, and I do like that we need to put a time frame on when the screening's up. I really do. I think we need to put that as a condition. That's my own thought is, if it's 6 months, that's, 6 months before winter starts, that now's the time to probably do it rather than the middle of winter, but that's just me. I wouldn't want to do it then. So I do like putting the condition of we have a time frame on when that screening needs to be put up. It's that we've not really addressed that before. Is 6 months, Chase? Is that, oh, sorry.
You'll have to, I can barely hear you. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
come on up.
Sorry, yeah.
Yep, sorry.
Says that we could buy the stuff and put it up like next.
The screening. So like a 6 month time period to have it done. Is that reasonable for you guys?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Perfect, thank you. All right, do we have a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
could I just ask for clarification on how I'm thinking we're going to be editing that number 4 condition? If we could talk through just a little bit what you guys are
Absolutely.
thinking about on that
Yeah.
before we make a motion.
absolutely. Yes, no, we can. So to me, we could add the 6-month time period on the permanent screening with the discretion of Eric going, or whoever, if it be Mr. Zimmerman going out to inspect it to make sure it is permanent screening. I think they're on board to do slats or something, so it is more permanent, but that we just verify that with them and give you guys the discretion to go out there. And if it's not, to let them know.
Would it help to add permanent fence screening? Would
Oh,
that
maybe
kind of
That's a good idea.
dictate that?
Okay, that's a good idea.
Madam Chair, we
Yes.
could even state slats since they are amenable to that. I think
Okay.
that's if that's what we'd like to see and they're amenable to it, then there's no question of what
Yep,
we're
we can do that
considering
permanent
permanent.
slatted.
Yeah,
Fence
I'm just thinking
screening,
down the
yeah.
road. I mean, screening kind of covers a big area. And so, I mean, if we designate it as a fence type screening, then I think that kind of covers anything that would be in addition to slats, but it was made for fence screening.
Fenced or slats. Does that help, Megan? Does that clarify a little bit on number 4?
That does, Madam Chair.
So we have that. So a 6-month time period with fenced or slatted permanent screening for number 4.
Yep.
Okay.
I'm good with that. Does make sense.
Any other discussion or questions? All right. Would anybody like to make a motion with the additional recommendations?
I'll make a motion. We approve this conditional use permit with the amended
Recommendations?
recommendations that we've given to Megan and
In the time. Okay. Thank you. We have a first. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Any final and further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries. So they'll have Troy or yourself get back a hold with Megan if you have any questions on some of these conditions, since we have changed them a little bit on there. Yeah.
And the next Tuesday at
Yep.
9 in the morning
No, I
is our
forget it
next one.
changed. Yeah, is the county commissioner meeting
So
next
whoever-
Tuesday at 9. Yes, I forget it.
Yeah,
changed.
so somebody needs to be there for that.
Yeah,
So,
yep, and it would be in the same room. Yep.
and Madam Chair, just let the applicant know, we appreciate, because they're moving from another location
yeah.
that, so I appreciate that they're moving into an area that's heavy industrial, and that they're trying to do everything in compliance
Yeah.
and being
No, we
here.
do
So
appreciate that.
appreciate that.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Do we have any other discussion or other business out there, since we kind of went backwards today? Awesome. I like it. No? Anybody else? All right. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and adjourn. It is 11 a.m.